Hello, lovely people. Welcome to the Connecting Life podcast. I'm your host, dianaboskma, and I'm here to help you connect the dots of life so that you can live your best life in a healthy and fulfilling way. So today, I'm going to do something a little bit different. So usually I have a conversation with a guest. Today, I'm going to have a conversation with you. And I want to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that's traditional nutrition, and also about why that still matters. And actually, it matters a lot, especially in the world we live in today. So, if you've been with me for a bit, you'll know that my heart sits right at the intersection of ancestral foods, micro, the microbiome, because that's super important to me, because I know that that is what creates good health. And I also support women who are rebuilding their lives, especially after difficult or abusive relationships. And all of those threads do have something in common with each other, and that's nourishment. So, proper, deep, biological, and also emotional nourishment. And, traditional nutrition is one of the most powerful tools that we have for creating that. So, get something nice to drink, something warm, maybe even a cup of broth or some herbal tea, and let's have a bit of an exploration on this topic together. So, I want to start with something that's fairly simple, and that's why do we talk about traditional foods when we're living in a world with delivery apps, convenient snacks, supplements, and all the nutrition science that are actually changing their mind all the time? I know that when I was a kid, there was a time where all of a sudden eggs were the devil. And if you ate one egg a week, oh, that would be dangerous. And that's changed a lot in the meantime because eggs are not considered the devil anymore. And it was with more things like another food that I really loved as a kid was a soup that my mum would make that would have um, chicken heart and liver in there. It was so tasty. And from one moment to the next, we didn't get it anymore, simply because all of a sudden organ meats were really bad for you. There's no grounds for that, so that's a bit of a shame, but it happens. This is what people do when they get information that may not always be correct. So, what the truth is our physiology hasn't changed. So what was good for us 100, 200 years ago is still good for us, but our environment has changed. So our bodies are still wired for the kinds of foods that humans thrived on for hundreds of years or generations even. Just think about it. And the food that we've had for centuries was rich in fat-soluble vitamins, in minerals, in enzymes, in beneficial bacteria, collagen, and proper fats. Now, I've really been following, well, not really following because he's not with us anymore, but Dr. Weston Price. He was a dentist who traveled the world in the early 1900s, and I've been reading his materials, and it's just amazing what he learned. And he documented what he found out very, very well and wrote a whole book about it. It's one of the best books on nutrition that you'll ever find. So what he found with remote cultures was that they had broad dental arches. They had straight teeth. As a dentist, that was one of the things that he would have looked at first. But what he also found was that they had strong immunity. They had really good health, and they had almost no degenerative diseases. And that's something that's really interesting to realize, that they did not have that, despite the fact that they were living in the same world the rest of us were. But what the big difference was is that they ate different. So they wouldn't think about protein powders, seed oils, calorie counting, or whether the bread was artisanal or not. They just didn't care about that. What they ate were the foods that nature gave them. And the way they prepared them was the way that their ancestors had always prepared them. And that's where the big thing lies, because we don't do that today. So when you think about how we do it today, is we modernized everything. Unfortunately, our biology hasn't because it won't evolve that quickly. It won't change that fast. And that's a mismatch and it's causing a lot of trouble. So when you think about modern food, then it's industrial seed oils. They're everywhere. Ultra processed snacks, also all over the place. Homogeneous dairy, white sugar in nearly everything. Grains that aren't soaked, that aren't sprouted, that aren't fermented. Animals raised indoors on grains instead of out on the pasture where they belong. Vegetables grown in depleted soil because fertilization is only the couple of things that get put in there to make them grow, but that doesn't mean they grow well. And then this massive fear of fats. It's just not great. So it's no wonder that we're dealing with hormone imbalances, fertility problems, mood swings, anxiety, depression, especially gut problems, autoimmune conditions, allergies, nutrient deficiencies. And for a lot of people, it's just generally they're tired. And being tired seems to be just a normal thing now. So the good thing is we don't have to live like this because nature still knows best. Because this has been this way for huge, huge amounts of generations. So traditional foods still are the right thing to do. They give your body the raw materials that it recognizes and that it knows how to use. That it knows exactly what to do with it. So what I found is with all the learning that I've done that the principles that Dr. Price and Dr. Pottenger and Sally Fallon and many others talk about, they're still the truth. They're still biologically correct. So what does this mean then? Traditional nutrition. I'll try to make it simple and practical. So when I talk about traditional nutrition, I want to make that practical for you because it doesn't have to be hard. So what do I mean with that? So it's real animal foods that are properly raised, like pastured beef, lamb, chicken. So animals that were outdoors, and organ meats, bone broths, and fermented dairy, eating eggs, but also butter, ghee, goose fat, these kind of things, tallow, and fish and shellfish. Those foods are very nutrient dense, especially in the fat soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and essential fatty acids like DHA. They're really good. So then what's next? Fermented foods. And those are the foods that you're also going to really need for health. So that's yogurt, milk kefir, fermented vegetables, fermented fish, and all sorts of traditionally cultured dairy products. And there's kombucha that's also really tasty. So those foods, they feed your microbiome. Those are the probiotic foods. And your microbiome is this ecosystem that regulates digestion, hormones, immunity, and because of the gut-brain axis, also our mood. So properly carbohydrates are another part of this. And what is that? Those are sourdough breads, soaked grains, soaked and sprouted legumes, and slow-cooked root vegetables. And as human beings, we've always eaten carbohydrates, like as long as we've been in this world. But they were always prepared in a way that would reduce anti-nutrients and increase digestibility. And that's what fermentation and soaking does. The next step is natural salt, spices, and herbs. And real sea salt, we can find it almost anywhere. So it's doable. It's the white that we don't need. And then things like honey can be really nice in flavor. And then all sorts of different spices like cumin, coriander, turmeric, rosemary, thyme, garlic, lemon juice to certain dishes is really great. And then, slow cooked meals like lamb with cinnamon and cardamom is really tasty. And then, broths. You can make sauces and all sorts of things with broth. You can drink it. You can add a bit of tomato paste and some herbal salt or something to it, or a bit of black pepper and salt. It becomes really tasty. And in traditional cuisines, people always knew how to make sure that the nutrition would become fully available. And they added flavor, and the preparation was just really, really good, because when you soak rice before you cook it, which is one of the really good things to do, then when you cook it, you add some spices to it, and then it becomes a very different thing. You can make pilaf that way as well. The soaking does not stop you from making any of the rice dishes that we do in our world. So this all is important for your microbiome. And as you know, the microbiome is my thing, so I will talk about it. So let me start by explaining that the microbiome, your gut microbiome, is a living ecosystem inside of you, and it needs the right environment to thrive. That's just really, really important. When we look at the microbiomes of people living on traditional diets, like Amazonian tribes or people in rural Africa or other indigenous groups, they have a huge amount of variety, as in diversity of microbes in their gut, in comparison to people in the West. And that diversity is what creates the resilience of the microbiome. And we need that variety, we really do. So, what supports the diversity? Well, first of all, fermented foods, because they have the microbes in there. So, that's a probiotic food. Any probiotic food will get you more variety. And then unprocessed animal fats, collagen rich broths, because broth helps heal and seal the gut lining. So, that also makes your gut healthier. And depending on where you are with your gut health, when you're fairly healthy, then traditionally prepared grains are fine. When you have digestive issues, then be very careful, because then several foods will actually become counterproductive is the word I was looking for, counterproductive to your gut health. The reason being is that because of their carbohydrate type, they can feed the microbes that you do not want in your gut. So if that's the case, we're going to have a conversation about that, because that's very individual. But generally speaking, for people who are relatively healthy, grains prepared in a traditional way are fine. And then herbs and spices, they're really good for you. The other thing is also mineral salt, like Himalaya salt, Celtic sea salt. And you have all these colored salts from different areas in the world. I had a whole set at some point. It was really cool, because they also all taste different. Like blue Persian salt has a little bit of a spicy taste to it, and it's just really nice. So the other part is, don't use any industrialized or ultra processed foods. Healthy people don't eat those. So for the microbiome, that really doesn't work. And without a healthy microbiome, everything becomes difficult. There's quite some research done about it, but when you don't have a healthy microbiome, it will have an effect on your fertility, your hormones, your mood, your immunity, your digestion, your energy, and your mental resilience. Literally everything struggles then. Everything suffers from that. So let's continue a bit with women specifically, as I'm a woman and many of the people listening to me are also women. So when you've been in going through trauma, and that can be anything, it could be from an abusive relationship, it could be that you've lived in a war zone, anything like that, or severe accidents, it doesn't really matter. It's trauma in general. Then you've survived something that literally shakes the very center of your being. And rebuilding your life then is not just emotional work, it's also physical. Because what the thing with trauma is that it affects everything. It affects your digestion, it affects your gut lining, it affects your nutrient absorption. It also affects your blood sugar stability because of all the hormones, and it also affects your hormones because of the stress hormones in your system. And those affect your sleep. It affects your appetite. Just think about when you're stressed out. Some people eat more, some people stop eating altogether. So it affects that too. Also, your resilience to stress, because when you're already on that level of stress and trauma, you're not going to have many, like, you're not just not going to have much left. And also, for a lot of women, it affects the way their body stores fat. So some become super skinny, others become overweight. And the good thing is with a traditional nutrient dense foods that helps the recovery on a deeper level. And my opinion is that it's an important part of recovery. So broths, they help rebuild. Eggs, they nourish. They have all the nutrients in there. So choline is one of the ones that when you have a good amount of that, you're going to have less anxiety because your body has the nutrients to deal with it. And then you have organ meats. The nutrients in there, they help restore. Healthy fats, they help you stabilize your nervous system. And then the fermented foods, they help you rebuild your microbiome because the microbiome really gets affected by stress. And when you've lived in a stressful situation for a long time, your microbiome will have suffered. So the moment you can then introduce fermented foods into your diet more, it will help rebuild. And then slow cooked, mineral rich meals that give your body this sense of safety. Because, you can do it like in a slow cooker, and then that warmth that helps. There's minerals in there, and the slowness, the smell, it really gives this feeling of home and safety. So eating is not just about nutrition. That's a really big part of it, but it's also about grounding yourself in your body and reminding yourself that you're worth taking care of, that you're worth of having good foods. Okay, so modern science is a thing, so I want to go there a little bit as well. Many people ask if a traditional diet is so important, where does that leave the modern nutritional science? Interestingly, modern nutritional science is catching up. And that's something that I found really amazing, having grown up with having to not eat certain things and being warned about so many things that now are considered healthy again. I find that really cool. So what is now what we're now seeing is the importance of fat soluble vitamins, and they need to come from the right fats because certain vitamins are more prevalent in certain fats. Also, the benefits of fermented foods. The amount of research that I've been reading over the last 10, 15 years has been so much more than ever before because it's something that we're now looking into. The the microbiome is becoming more and more of a thing of, oh, wait, this is really something important for health. And then also the role of DHA in brain development. The other part that modern science is really catching up on is how seed oils oxidize and cause inflammation. Then also the vagus nerve and the gut brain axis and all these things. That's being researched now. So the link between the microbiome and mental health is becoming more clear. The other part is that bone broth, healing and sealing the gut lining, is also more and more in research. You can see that that is definitely a thing. The value of organ meats, the importance of collagen, and also the need for nutrient density in pregnancy and preconception. One of the things that I've seen research about is that when a mother doesn't have a good amount of zinc in her system, she doesn't have that available to the baby. This means that the baby's kidneys will be smaller than that of a mother who does have a good amount of zinc in her system. And that's a lifetime thing. So as a woman who wants to have healthy babies, it is really important to eat a lot of foods with that are deeply nourishing and have a good amount of nutrients in there. And also, what's becoming more and more clear, and that's also in the mainstream media, is that the harm that's caused by ultra processed foods. There's books about it, it's all over the news quite regularly. So, year after year after year, there are studies that start to show that the ancestral cultures were right with the way they were nourishing themselves. So, cool thing is we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can just pick up where they left off. And that's not even that long ago. We just have to look at the older books and see what they did and, cook at home again. So you might now wonder how you can get started today. And that's not that hard. It's actually pretty easy. Well, I think it is. A couple of things that you can do is create yourself a pan of broth. It's not hard. It's a bit of, like what I do when I need a quick broth is a couple of chicken thighs because they have the meat and the bones, then a bit of onion, carrot, celery, some peppercorns. Let that sit for a couple of hours and you have a lovely broth. Broth is really good. It's good for your gut. It's good for your gut. Good for your joints. It's good for your skin and for your immunity. The other thing is change your fats. The seed oils, they're not great at all. They cause inflammation. So go back to traditional fats like olive oil, butter, ghee, tallow. They're great to cook with. And adding a fermented food. Many of you have had yogurt in your life multiple times. That's a good one already. Then there's also things like milk kefir. Here in the UK, we can buy that in the supermarkets. Most of them are pretty good. Then there's kombucha you can buy in the supermarkets here, also quite good. We can also get raw fermented vegetables, and I think in most countries that will be available. You need to look for a bit. On the other end, also making your own kombucha, water kefir, milk kefir, or fermented vegetables is not super hard. It's a new thing, but it's not complex. It's pretty simple to create. And then also adding good proteins to your meals. Meat, fish, eggs. They're all really deeply nourishing. And for minerals, making sure that you use unrefined salt, sea salt, like Celtic sea salt or Himalaya salt. And many herbs are rich in minerals, so you can look at those as well. Another thing is slow cooked meals are amazing. They're really yummy as well because the flavors they melt into each other. They become really nice. So, what you can do is, for instance, a lamb stew. And Middle Eastern spices are super yummy. I love using those. The other thing is that you can use a bit of stewing beef with root vegetables. Like one of the things that I sometimes do is Irish stew. That's lamb with root vegetables. If sometimes for some people lamb's quite expensive, and then when beef is cheaper, you can use that. You can use different meats if you want. You don't have to do any of them. And also thinking about the concept of nose to tail eating. And what that means is that you also eat the organ meats. And you can start really simple by just buying a bit of liver pate and eating that. If you like liver, you can fry that in a pan, and when you have leftovers, make that into your own liver pate. One of the dishes that I like making is an Indonesian dish that's called rendang, and I like adding some liver to that. I learned from a friend many years ago who was from Indonesia, and what she would do would be half beef liver and half beef, and then with the coconut and everything in there, it's really tasty. And when you do tiny little things like this, they will be a huge change over time. It will just improve your health and you'll be less tired and just one step at a time. Don't get overwhelmed. Don't do too much at the same time because then it will not work. So, what I do is that I work with women who've lived through difficult things. And for many of them, there is at some point the turning point of wait, things have to change. And what I found really, really fascinating is that there is at some point a specific turning point. So initially, when someone's been through a lot of hard stuff, they just focus on the bigger things. They don't think about themselves that much. They just want to get things sorted, which makes sense. You need to make sure you have a house, an income, and all these kind of things. So it's always focusing on the outside initially to get all the difficult parts done. And then that point is there when the self care starts happening. And within that self care starts to come that point of nutrition. And what I found the most fascinating to see is that moment of wanting to eat really good foods, really taking care of themselves. And then there's this shift from surviving to wait. I want to really, really take care of myself. And then it becomes thriving. And it's been amazing to see that shift in people or women. So what happens is that when you start to add healthy foods, and I'm talking about traditional foods, but even women who just start to cook for themselves, you see that difference. What starts to happen is that their skin starts to look better, their digestion calms down and becomes much more settled. Sleep improves. And overall, there's this feeling of steady, less overwhelm, and just more present, more embodied. It makes sense when you think about what traditional food does for us. It's not magic at all. It's simple biology because your body just responds to what it's given. And with traditional nutrition, it works because this is how we've done it for a long, long time. This is how humans thrive throughout the centuries. So that's what it is like. So there's one thing that I keep thinking about because a lot of people call traditional foods old fashioned. I think they're timeless. They're not nostalgic. They're literally the foundation of how we stay healthy. So they'll be just as relevant for our great grandchildren as they were for our great grandparents because nature doesn't change like that. All of a sudden, our biology doesn't change just because factories make our food. Our bodies haven't at all. We're still there where we need real foods. So I want to thank you for spending this time with me. I was quite happy to tell you all of this, and I hope that what I shared with you today has inspired you or encouraged you or maybe nudged you to take a couple of steps towards traditional nutrient dense foods because your body is really craving it. And that's it for today. I hope that you'll take very good care of yourself, that you prioritize yourself today because you're worth it. And till the next podcast episode, have a great day.